Hi, I'm Greg Smith, the laziest programmer on earth. And today we're going to look at how to create a templated website based on a template that we download from the internet. Now, a lot of times we get these templates and they're really complicated. There are lots and lots of sections, lots of different HTML files. And if you want to modify them, it can be a lot of work. So what I'm going to do today is show you how to cut that work probably by a factor of 10 just by using a product or a program that's probably on your Mac or PC right now called the C Preprocessor. So let's dive in. So first, let's talk a little bit about where we get these templates. There are websites all over that will share templates with you. I use Template Monster, and I signed up for their service, Template One. I don't get a kickback on this, so I'm not advertising them. It's just this happens to be a good service that I use. I paid for a year, which was $180 for a year, and I'm finding that it's very valuable. They have all kinds of WordPress themes. They have graphic assets, presentation templates, and so on. So these templates are really valuable. They're very expansive in the sense that you get a lot for what you ask for or what you download. So Creative Tim is actually a great place to go for websites, for templates. I recommend that you get a Bootstrap HTML template. Bootstrap is a framework that breaks your screen up into 12 columns, and so everything is pretty regular. And it's very responsive, and that means that regardless of whether you have a big screen or a small screen, whether you're on a handheld device or a tablet, you're going to get a pretty good looking website. So a responsive website is very important. Many people talk about developing their websites mobile first, because if it looks good on mobile, chances are really good it's going to look good on the desktop. And it turns out that about 75% of views that are happening on websites right now are coming from mobile devices. So you really do want a responsive website. Oh, one other thing I want to tell you about, the Pixabay.com is a great resource for royalty-free graphics. I mentioned this in another video. The graphics that you find on the internet that you might just scarf up as you Google around are not free. They're almost all copyright owned, that if you use them and the owner finds out, you're going to owe them some money, or at least have to take the site down. So I've gone to Monster One and I've downloaded the theme that I like. I pulled it up here in VS Code. Let's just take a look at some of the features that we get with this website, with this template. I'm going to open in my default browser. So here's a nice business theme, and you have what's called a revolving hero. We can click through the different styles of these banners that come up. And notice that there's this gray image in the background that says 2000 by 1333. That's just a placeholder image. You can put your own graphic in here. And if we scroll down, and notice how animated this is. There you go. So here are some different icons that this offers. But notice also that this is broken up into sections, right? That there are different sections here. And what you would normally have to do here is go in and fill in the blanks. Every place where there was a blank image, you'd have to put your own image. Any place where there were different categories for your showcasing your work, you would have to add your own categories. Likewise, here's a section that shows the team. You want to put in your own managing director, senior consultant, and project manager. You'd want to fill in the blanks here. What if you have four? What if you have four people that you want to showcase here? What would you do then? And we'll talk about that. Here's another hero. Here are some blog posts. This is an interesting thing, the different ways that they do layouts. Okay, these little animated numbers showing how many lines of code and so on. These are testimonials, and you can see they scroll through, and you want to put your own testimonials in and put your own images in. These are some of the companies that this site has worked for. And then down here is your footer with what will eventually be my information, and then our social media bar. So that's just one of the many layouts. Here's the agency layout. Very similar, but this is a different design concept view. This is another showcase. This is another way of showing the latest activities, and so on. And so what you find is that you can pick whatever layout you want, but what if say, this layout has this introduction to our company that I like, but I want to mix it with what was on, say, this business page, where down here we have, this, our dedicated team. What if we want to take this out and put the other one in? Well, you've got a lot of editing to do. What if there are sections you don't want? You've got to pull them out. What if you want to put them back in? All of these things are problems that you're going to have with your templates. And because you have such an extensive set of sections and what I'll call components, it would be really nice to be able to swap them easily. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. And one of the things that I think you need to learn as a lazy programmer is how to use the Linux command line. The Linux command line goes back 50 or 60 years. And if you're on a Mac machine, your command line, your terminal, looks very much like Linux. It's called actually built on the Mach shell, or the Mach kernel coming out of MIT. If you're on Windows, there are a couple ways to get a shell. One of them is to use Git Bash, which is not bad, but I recommend that you get CGWin and download, not everything, just the command line tools. CGWin is very powerful. It looks almost like Linux. Trying to use CGWin in a Windows environment, there are some headaches there, including path names are kind of convoluted. But at the end of the day, you'll be much better off using CGWin than trying to use DOS. The key to building these templates and making them work for you is a program called CPP, or the C Preprocessor. Back in the day, when Linux and Unix were young, the programming language of choice was the C programming language. And when C was created, there were a number of features missing, like how to include files into a source module. If you've used the import or require capabilities in Java or JavaScript, that's kind of what this is. There were also this concept of macros that could expand to replace what looked like functions. And this macro substitution has since been kind of frowned upon in programming languages. It creates a lot of side effects that can be pretty detrimental. But one of the things that it does for you is that it actually does this include capability. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create little fragments of HTML and include them into our main module. And for argument's sake, just to make things interesting, I'm going to start with index.html. You can see that there are a bunch of them here. Each one of these represents the different layouts that this template author created. So I'm going to start with index.html, and I'm going to create a folder here called frags. And I'm going to put all of our code fragments, our HTML fragments, in this folder. And also to make our lives a little bit easier, I'm going to rename, I'm going to actually copy this, and I'm going to rename it as index.htm. So index.htm is going to be our template, okay? And index.html is our destination. We're going to try and get to this. In fact, I'm going to rename this while I'm thinking about it, index-orig, just so we have a frame that we can compare the two. Okay, so far we haven't done anything but rename files. Let's double check, make sure everything's still working the way we expect it to. I'm going to open it in my browser, and it still looks good. Okay, so we're off to a good start. We haven't really broken anything. So if we look at this code, there's a lot of boilerplate at the top, and it turns out that all this boilerplate code is exactly the same for all these layouts. So rather than try and keep track of it, I'm just going to cut it out, and I'm going to go to our fragment folder, and I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to just call it head.htm. Notice I'm using HTML here and not HTML. This is a convention for me so that I know that I'm working with HTML, but it's a fragment. It's not a complete file. I'm going to paste that in there. And notice that I'm using VS Code, and all of the hinting and all of the colorization and all of that is in place because I'm using an HTML file. VS Code, right out of the box, recognizes HTML as a type of HTML file. So I don't have to do anything special. I don't have to remind VS Code that HTML is a HTML file. I get that right out of the box. So far so good, right? Let's go back to our HTML file, our index.html. And notice that we no longer have a head. And in fact, if we try to look at this file in our browser, it's going to be pretty nasty. Yeah. no CSS, all kinds of problems, right? Because we don't have any of that head matter. So let's put that head matter back in. And what I want to do here, oops, excuse me, I'm just going to say pound include head.html. Now that alone isn't enough to pull that in, and HTML doesn't have a macro preprocessor. It doesn't have the concept of including other files. So what we need to do is use the C preprocessor, and that command is just CPP, and we want to say -i to tell it where the fragments are, frags, so .frags, and we also have to specify -e. Turns out that over time the C preprocessor has taken on a lot of other roles, including compiling and linking and all kinds of other things. But by saying -e, we're saying, please, just do the C preprocessor. And I'm going to run index.htm, and I'm going to spit it out to index.html. Okay. We see right here, linker input unused. Oh, I think I need to say no space here. Okay, there we go. Now we've got a little bit of a warning. I'm going to ask you to just ignore that for now. It turns out that the macro preprocessor sees an apostrophe and thinks it's a command back to the preprocessor. It doesn't hurt our code at all, so we'll just ignore it for now. But let's not ignore our new index.html. Our index.html. Look, it pulled in our header and merged it with our body. And if we go and look at this in our browser, it looks pretty darn good. It's working for the most part. Well, kind of. What's all this noise here? So these pound signs are notes from the C preprocessor to the C compiler about what files were included. And so when you're debugging your code, you can go back and figure out where these modules came from. We don't need any of that. So we're going to pull all of that out. So now we need to use another trick of Linux, which is using the grep command. Grep stands for General Regular Expression Processor. And if you learn nothing else from the laziest programmer on earth, learn regular expressions. The regular expressions in various forms are used in every programming language. They're used in relational databases. They're used everywhere. And the sooner you master regular expressions, the more powerful you'll be as a programmer, and the lazier you can be when writing your code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to pipe this to grep-v, and I'm going to say I want to ignore anything that begins with, and that's what the -v means, ignore anything that begins with a pound sign. Okay, and I want that to go out. So what I'm doing here is all of this commentary code that came out of the C preprocessor, I'm going to suck it right out by using grep-v. And that caret at the beginning says beginning of line, pound sign says the hash character. So I'm going to run that. Look at that. Clean that right up. No more pound signs. And when we go back to our browser and we reload this, very, very nice. It looks just like it did before. And if you want, we can even compare to the original. So let's pull that up at the same time here. And index-orig. Okay, nice. And there's the original. And you can see they look pretty much alike. Now, one of the first things I notice is that this is branded for Uzorn, which is the name of the company that built this template. So let's fix that right away. Let's go into our frag, and any place where we see the word Uzorn, replace, Uzorn, and there it is. I'm going to replace that with just Agile Frontiers, because we're building my Agile Frontiers website today. Okay, so no other places in here, that's fine. But that was just the title. We have more work to do to get it out of the header. So let's go ahead and find the header. Now, remember, we want to work on index.htm. It's really easy to get confused between the two files. Make sure you're working on your .htm. So here's the body, and we can see here that this template designer has given us some hints as to where different sections of this belong. And here's the loader for the spinner. Here is the main wrapper, which includes the main nav. And then down here are the social media bits. Here's the content wrapper for the entire page. Here's the header. So This could be really, really hard to edit if we didn't have VS Code. And so what we can do with VS Code is come down here. So you see where the body is. If I hover over the index of lines or the line numbers, you see these little carrots. If I click on this, it collapses the entire body down to just one line of code. So what I can do now is I can go through here and start collapsing sections that I know I'm going to want to extract as bits of code. That's going to be the main nav. So I'm just going to grab this, cut it out, go back to my frags folder, create a new file called main nav.htm, remember, and then we'll post that. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and change this to whatever text I want it to be. I'm just going to call it Agile Frontiers. Your fun guys. We'll clean this up later, but this is just the social nav block. And then back in our index.htm, we're going to say, right where I took that out, right here, pound include main nav.htm. Okay. And I'm going to rerun my little test. And okay, so we noticed we did change the title, right? Agile Frontiers, but for some reason my nav has not changed. And so we need to fix that. So that was the main nav. That was not the actual navigation bar. Here's our header. That's the header that has our navigation in it. There we go. There's all the navigation, all the menus. You can see them here, the home, the about us, all that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over to my sidebar, click that, grab everything that says navigation, cut that out. Go back to my frags and navigation.htm. Paste. One of the things I also like to do is to go ahead and format this. You notice that when I formatted this, it didn't change anything. It just fixed all the indentation and stuff, but it also justified everything, which makes it easier to read inside this individual fragment. So let's go back to index.htm. And remember, your include command must be in the leftmost column. To a certain degree, there's some leeway with spaces and tabs. So we're going to include navigation.htm. Okay, run our little script. Review this, and still looks good. We haven't broken anything. And here it is. So this container with this basic wrapper is what's really causing our heartburn here. And we've got a little bit of our header. So what I want to do here is I'm going to actually collect all of this. See that? That's the whole header. And notice that the header even has an include file in it. So the C preprocessor is recursive. It'll open up an include file, and if there are include files in that, it'll open those up as well. So now, go back to my frags folder, create header.htm, paste it, format it, watch this. Your index includes should be in column 1. Very nice. And any place where there's Uzorn, which is the name of the company that built the template, I'm going to replace this with Agile Frontiers. Now, you might notice I'm constantly typing Agile Frontiers. I could make a typo. That would be a drag. So what if instead I create a new file and I just call it constants.htm. Okay, and in constants I say pound define title equals Agile Frontiers. There we go. Let's give that another try and refresh. There's our header. Notice that it says title, right? But what if, stay with me, right here at the very top of my index.htm, I say pound include constants.htm. Okay, let's run our little script and come back to my website, and it says Agile Frontiers. In fact, I remember that I modified this in the head, right? It's in my head HTML. So let's change that to title. Make sure that works. I think you see where I'm going with this, right? So not only am I creating the Agile Frontiers website, nice. So now I can go back to constants and change this to, you know, Bud's Automotive. Okay, and now I have Bud's Automotive website. And I only changed one thing. So what we're doing now is we're using the C preprocessor as a templating language, and we can have constant values that are used everywhere. It turns out there are actually even macros that you can pass parameters into and have like almost functions. So we're going to keep that in mind as we move forward. I'm going to change this back because Bud's Automotive is not what we're working on today, but we're going to do Agile Frontiers. Okay. All right. So now you can see what's happening. We've got some nice little fragments here. If I know that if I want to modify the navigation, I would come here so I know where my menus are. In fact, let's go see if we can't create a macro for a menu item. Okay, so this is what a menu item looks like. Okay, let's copy that. And let's go to our constants. And I'm going to say pound define. Menu item, A and B, and we want to do that line of code. And so what we want first is an href. In fact, I'm going to make that uppercase just so it doesn't, you don't want to get this, any constant confused with what's in here. So href and text. So we'll change this to href. And change this to text. Okay. And back in our navigation, what I can do now is I can say menu item, and I want it to be index.html and home business. And I should end up with two menu items, both saying home business. See, just like that. So now what I can do is I can remove this guy, and this will still say index.html, and I'll say home. Okay, and refresh. And this just says, whoops, I forgot to run my template. But you may notice that I've been, running this script over and over again. It's kind of a pain in the neck to have to run it. So what I'm going to do, and I recommend you learn how to do Linux shell scripting because it will be a huge time saver. If you want to be a proper lazy programmer, this is the easiest way to do it. I'm going to do a touch make.shell. Now I've got this shell program or script in here. Here's make.shell. Cool. I'm going to make it executable. So I do a chmod, all add executable, make.shell. I'm going to do a history and grab that last command that I ran, my CPP-I. I'm going to put it right there. And now I should be able to just say make.shell and it'll run my command for me. Nice. Let's genericize this a little bit because if you are a lazy programmer, you're going to want to make this reusable. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting a variable to file name equal $1. And now what I can do is I can replace index.html with $file name and index.html with $file name. Okay. And so now what I can do is I can just say make.sh index. And what I'm leading up to here is that we're going to do other files as well, not just the index, but the about page and so on. Okay, so now that's running, but it's kind of a pain in the neck to have to do it on my own every time. So what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to use the while command. While true, do, first off, sleep for 1 second, and then do my make.sh index, and done. So now my little script is running every second for me in the background. All I have to do now is come back to my screen and refresh. Very nice. And there's my home page. Okay. It couldn't get to it because, oh, look. Yeah, I went to HTML href, right? It didn't actually expand href. So that's a problem. We've got to fix that. So let's go back to our constants. Here's href. Why didn't it expand? Let's try it again. It's running. And we go back and home. There, that's better. So yeah, it looks like if it's in quotes, it's going to not expand it. Where we have this definition, we very likely should put this in quotes. Now we've got a very simple template-driven system. And the world is our oyster. We can replace all of these now very simply with menu item, right? And so maybe I want a menu item that says about. Oops. And we refresh. And there's our about page. Boom. And it turns out we actually have a default about page in here, so I went right to it. And of course, it hasn't been templated, so it pulled up the old content. So you can see where we're going here, right? Now, you could get carried away here if you wanted to. Here is the layout for the entire menu. Like this is the layout for a menu, not just or a drop-down menu. And if we wanted to, we could extract this, drop that in there, format it to make it pretty. In here, this is drop-down menu, and I'm just looking to see if there's anything else in it. Oh, the word home. So I'm going to put, I'm going to want, you know what? I could make this a macro. So let's do that. So it's going to be, and we'll have to put new line or backslashes at the end, and then we'll call this menu title. Other ways to identify these as parameters would be to use underscores. So what I can do here is I can put underscore title. That identifies it. And then the problem now is that we have this, list of menus here, and this is specific to the main menu, and we're not going to want to stuff our menu in the middle of that. There are a couple ways we could do it. We could stuff it here as a parameter. I also don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this out like this, and this is going to become menu, and then we're going to create another define, which is menu end, which looks like this. Okay, and again, we need to put backslashes on here so that it knows that these are all part of the same macro. Okay, so we'll do a pound menu.htm, and now this is a little bit different. So we are creating macros to create the menu. We're not actually inserting the menu. It's a little bit different. But when we go to index.htm, I can do pound include menu.htm, which includes my macros. Then down here, where I have my actual, in here, where's my navigation, right? Here I can say, in my navigation, what happened to, I can do now menu, and I want to give it a title, and it's going to be my home menu. Okay, and then underneath that, I can put my two menu items, right? And then underneath that, I can say menu end, like that. And that should work. That should give us the same menu that we had a minute ago. And something's missing. There's our home menu, and there's our about. So I goofed something up. Invalid preprocessing directive. Oh, I misspelled include. Silly me. That's copy and paste is the best thing in the world. We should do that all the time. Backslash. Oh, there we go, right there. And now it's working the way we expect it to. There's our home, and there's our about. And in fact, you could easily indent this. That wouldn't hurt anything. We can create more menus, and we will. I'm just going to go ahead and replace each of these with menu. And notice I'm keeping these navigation tags here so that when we look at the output, we can actually review it. But I want to go back and look at my code now, look at my results. Everything working? Yes, We only have two menus now. Okay. And yep, that's working. Let's go to the About Us page. Yep. Let's go to the Services page. Yep. And let's go to the Contact Us page. Very, very nice. So we've successfully demonstrated how to break these massive HTML files into smaller pieces. And we've also demonstrated how we can use macros to simplify our coding process so that we're no longer dealing with HTML, but we're actually dealing with a macro language that's specifically designed to help us build our web pages. Tune in next time when we finish the process with index.htm. And when we're done with it, it's just going to be a series of includes. And then we're going to take those same components from index.htm and build up our About page and our Contact Us page. So please do tune in for the next episode of The Laziest Programmer on Earth. I'm Greg Smith. See you then.